Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man whom, when you listen to this, will probably be sitting next to me on a bus on the way to Atlanta. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. And that covers between like when we put this show out and like 2 years down the line. That is how long that bus ride is, right?
It might feel that long.
Okay.
If the Total Soccer Show is disbanded, it's because that journey went badly.
And yet that would be troubling because we've spent way more time together than that.
Yeah, but I think in more luxurious circumstances.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
You did buy us a pillow each though, right?
I did.
So,
well,
yeah.
my wife did actually. She did the research. She found the neck pillows.
Oh, now she's been on the show. She's contributed.
That's how it works.
Yeah. So we are off to Atlanta for MLS Cup. We were going to do a big MLS Cup preview show, but we've kind of already done it, right? You talked to Matt Doyle, I talked to Stu Holden. I feel like we have a good feel. We just be repeating what they said. So maybe let's just give our quick impressions of how MLS Cup's going to go before we get down there.
Sure. It could be very exciting and it could not be very exciting.
Yeah.
And I think... I mean, obviously, things can go different ways. It depends on what both teams do. But I do have the feeling that we might see more of what we saw of like the first leg of Red Bulls versus Atlanta than, say, maybe some of the more electrifying games we've seen from Atlanta this season.
Because it sounds like Portland's plan will be to sit somewhat deep and not let Atlanta through and try and, connect through Obobase on the counter-attack. Yep. And it sounds like Atlanta, if they're smart, won't go all in and overcommit because then you're inviting the counter-attack. So I'm going to guess the first half at least is going to be two teams holding back, right? And what I'll be hoping for is an early goal either way, right? So an early Portland goal means that Atlanta really have to overcommit and go for it, and then the game theoretically opens up.
Yep.
Or an Atlanta goal means that Portland then have to say, okay, no more bunkering. Let's let it loose. So an early goal is what I want.
So my biased view, given that we will be in Atlanta, is that maybe I want that early goal to be Atlanta because I do think if they score, it's all types of problems for Portland.
Yeah.
I think in terms of it being an exciting game, if you're a neutral or obviously a Portland fan, you probably want Portland to score first because I think then the bunker comes into more like dramatic effect with Atlanta really trying to make something happen. If Atlanta get that goal, I think they can do pretty much what they want to do against a Portland team that tries to counterattack. Then again, Sporting KC thought that exact same thing, and here we are.
If you'd like to get more detail, to preview more detail, I would recommend going back and listening to Taylor's interview with Matt Doyle.
Yeah, you guys face Stu Holden.
You guys really got into it. To be fair, when I talked to Stu Holden, we talked MLS Cup and we talked Champions League. It was more long-term planning with Stu Holden.
Yeah, you didn't want to take a shot at the king, so you went into commentary instead. To clarify, Matt Doyle is the king. I am nowhere near affiliated.
I thought it was
you. No.
All right, so there's
I
your
am jester at best.
There's your MLS Cup preview. Maybe the shortest one in history.
Pretty much.
Today we have 5 listener questions. I should have said this at the top. We're pre-recording this Thursday night before we sit next to each other on the bus for 12 hours. So you'll be hearing this on Friday. You may even be hearing this after Josh Sargent has made his debut for Werder Bremen.
You may even.
Yeah. Did you see that news that Sargent
will be in the squad?
Will definitely be in the matchday squad.
Yeah, why are you hyping this? He's going to be in the squad.
Yeah, he's going to sit on the bench and
Yeah, and warm
come
up.
off the bench and score against Dusseldorf.
And maybe get 2 minutes in the 90th minute to kill some time. Yeah, I mean, it's not that. It's not that I'm not excited for Josh Sargent. It's just that once that sort of hype meter or like the hype clock goes around a few times, maybe just back off a little bit and let things happen as they happen. It'd be great if he's in the squad. It would be great if he gets minutes.
Yeah. But
even then, I'm still sort of like, but let's wait until it's like 20 minutes or 25 minutes. Then that means to me that he's kind of on the verge of breaking through.
Okay, well, let's get to some players who have already broken through in Germany. The first question today comes from Todd Tanner. Todd says, Christian Pulisic finished second in the Kopa Trophy race behind Kylian Mbappe, the France Football Award for Best U21 Player in the World, voted on by former Ballon d'Or winners. Todd's question is simply, is Christian Pulisic that good?
My initial reaction when I read this question was no, I don't think he is. The more I've thought about it, the more I've researched, the answer is yeah, kinda. And that's the best way I can put it. Before I go into more of my explanation, I have to say, Daryl, I think you kind of looking at the way the voting went, summarized it very, very well. So I'll throw it back to you for this one.
Actually, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think
110 points for Mbappe, 31 for Pulisic.
And then Justin Kluivert just behind with less than Pulisic, right?
You got it.
Here's what I would say is I think that kind of correctly rates Christian Pulisic. He is an incredible young player.
Yep.
He's probably the best of the young players that aren't Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah.
And then Kylian Mbappe is in this different level where we assume one day he's going to be Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar type guy, right? He's just next level. And then Pulisic is the top of the pile just behind that. And that pile includes kids like Justin Kluivert, who did well in the Netherlands and is like in and out of the Roma team.
I feel like you're going to be able to list two more.
Kai Havertz is a young guy getting a lot of minutes with Bayern.
Was not in the short list though.
No, he wasn't. But he is a talented young player, and he's in a similar age group, right? Pulisic just turned 20.
Yeah.
Havertz, and Kluivert, see what I did there, are both 19, so I think he's in a similar age range.
Yeah, but I make that distinction only to say that it is worth remembering, because that is the thing that then I was like, well, yeah, I guess if you're going with this list, he's in there, which is that you have a list of 10 that were shortlisted, then they're voted on by, I believe, past Ballon d'Or winners. So I think that also probably comes into it a little bit. I'm actually surprised that Trent Alexander-Arnold wasn't higher up the list with more votes because of that fact.
Let me guess, a lot of Ballon d'Or winners are attackers, and they're going to vote for attacking players.
That would be my guess, which is why probably Gigi Donnarumma, who was on that short list, was not anywhere near that final voting. So, and then you've got Rizzo Douane, Patrick Cutrone, Amadou Haidara, all good players, but no one that I think we would ever, maybe 5 years from now, we're going to be like, that player's amazing. But right now it's sort of like, okay, that's great.
And I think part of this is almost being surprised when we realise how great Christian Pulisic is. Not quite Mbappe great, but the best of the rest in his age group. Is that we've started to take him for granted because we've just got used to having Christian Pulisic as an American 20-year-old playing for Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga and the Champions League. And I know he's in a dip in form right now.
Yeah.
I would argue he's had a lot of injuries this season, lots of little calf injuries and thigh injuries and this and that have given him this stuttering start to this season. But he's finished second in the Ballon d'Or race without even playing in the World Cup.
Yeah. But I think that's why my initial read was no, is because didn't play in the World Cup.
Never even played in a World Cup.
Really, if you're going with people who aren't yet 20 who have looked very good for Borussia Dortmund this season, I think you could make a very good argument that Jadon Sancho should be on that list.
That's fair.
I think he probably will be in a couple of years. He's a little bit younger. And so I think that's where it comes down. Is he's maybe not even the best teenager on his team right now and isn't starting all the time.
But that's a right now injuries and form kind of thing.
True.
Right?
But I think it's hard for me, at least, to remove the immediacy of the situation from the equation. So for me, it's sort of if he were starting every single game for Borussia Dortmund the way he has in games past or in stretches past, that would make it more of a definitely starting for Borussia Dortmund, playing in the Champions League, leading the United States. Yeah, he deserves to be on that list.
The United States thing is interesting as well because we don't see him with fresh eyes anymore, right? When he plays for the United States. I remember his game against England. We didn't think he had a particularly good game, right? When the US lost to England. Don't want to talk about this game too much.
Not so much.
English people, he really caught the eye.
Really?
He ran at people a lot of times. It didn't actually result in anything, but it felt dangerous. A lot of English people before maybe didn't know who Pulisic was. They were all like, "Oh, who's that number 10?"
Yes, and the English public is so well known for having reasoned and rational responses to individual performances.
Touche. But just as I just want to use that as a barometer of you sort of average soccer fan seeing Pulisic for the first time. It's worth remembering that he's this young kid that really makes people sit up and take notice, right?
Yeah.
And if it was Kylian Mbappe, he might have dribbled around those England defenders and scored. Pulisic didn't quite manage that, but it's enough to get the attention of jaded England fans.
Yeah, true. Very, very well said. And I think the other thing for me is that it's enough to get votes from. There's no American players in the Ballon d'Or, or who have won the Ballon d'Or. This is all people playing in Europe, or past winners who all.
Do Ronaldo and Messi get a vote for each Ballon d'Or they've won?
I hope so. That would be awesome. That's quite the voting block right
voting,
there.
Right? Yeah. They'd be super delegates.
But to me, it speaks to he is a more known quantity than I think maybe I recognized. That I kind of saw those Chelsea rumors and I was like, he's young. I guess that makes sense. Dortmund are good. Why not? But the more I see stuff like this, I'm like, oh, it's actually the case that he's held in pretty high regard as opposed to just high regard by Americans.
Okay, it's worth just digging into what the Kopa Trophy is, right? So best under 21 player, but it's awarded by France Football, who also award the Ballon d'Or.
Yep.
It's named after Raymond Kopa, who was a player who did a lot very young in France and then went off to Real Madrid, Frenchman. Because we haven't talked about the other Ballon d'Or winners. So Luka Modric won the men's Ballon d'Or and Ada Hegerberg won the women's Ballon d'Or.
They both did.
Congratulations to both.
The streak of Ronaldo and Messi is over. Long shall Luka Modric reign for this year.
for this year.
Yes.
Yeah. All you got to do is make a World Cup final and win the Champions League.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's all.
And then anyone else can win that trophy. It's Kylian Mbappe's day is coming, I think.
I would say that's a
once
fair
he's no
shout.
longer Copa eligible.
Yeah.
Ready for the next question?
I am. I think you asked the first one. I'll ask this one. Dylan Thompson asks, why should Greg Berhalter or any U.S. men's national team coach, or any coach for that matter, be expected to provide their intended style of play to the media? I think it creates an unnecessary and unhelpful barometer that is used to judge their tenure. The only style of play that should matter is score more goals than the other team. Anything beyond that should be reserved for players and coaches and not given to the media as an unnecessary means to judge performance.
So I disagree with Dylan here, but I do appreciate him raising this question. I think it's a question worth asking, right? I would say that they don't have to give their style of play, right? Jurgen Klinsmann didn't, and he lasted a good few years without giving a style of play beyond we're going to be more proactive.
Well, but I think you've just proved Dylan's point right there, which is that that's what we remember. We remember in that opening press conference he said we want to be proactive, possession soccer, we want to go at them, like this new era, and that's what we remember.
Toe-to-toe is a phrase he used.
But I think we did then, every time the United States didn't do that and it was kind of sitting back and being defensive, the kind of read on that was, well, you said you were going to be proactive attacking soccer and you're doing the same old stuff. And he was sort of judged by that initial statement.
So here's what I think. If you don't communicate your style, then you're also not communicating the reasoning for your decisions, and you're not giving the media and the fans and the public a fair way to judge you. And the thing is, they're going to judge you anyway, right? That's what people do. They judge how the coach is doing. By telling the media what your style of play is, you're giving them an accurate yardstick to measure you by, right? Otherwise, they'll be measuring something that you're not even trying to do. And it would be like using a mercury thermometer to measure blood glucose.
Yeah.
Right? If you just don't have the right measurement, then the whole conversation is a waste of time. So I also think that in Berhalter's case specifically, explaining, not in deep detail, but basically explaining roughly his style of play is a sign of confidence, right? It's like, this is the system, this is what we're going to go out and do. It puts a marker down and presents more confidence than if you were scared to say what your style of play is.
I would agree with you, except that it took a follow-up question from Alexi Lalas telling him, be specific and tell me how you're going to play, for him to say that. The first one was a little bit more general. Yeah. So I don't know if I would go with you as far as to say it's a sign of confidence, but I would say...
No, but I'm saying a coach saying what their style of play is and being prepared to stand by it is a sign of confidence, just in general, not just in this Berhalter instance.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
But I would say, to Dylan's point, though, that then there is that argument that, but then what happens if that style of play doesn't work? Then you've automatically kind of put a target on your back.
Yeah.
I would say that's one way of seeing it. The way I would interpret that more is if that's what you choose to do and you choose to give the way you're going to play, which I honestly do think you have to. If a new national team manager came in and said we're going to score more goals than the other team, people would be annoyed, and a lot of people would be like, this is who we've hired. So that's one part of it.
And the correct follow-up question would be, how are you going to do that?
Exactly. Yeah. And then I guess it's up to the manager whether or not he or she wants to answer that, but still. But I would say the second part of it is that Jurgen Klinsmann, as I said, was kind of held to that standard and judged by we're going to play attacking soccer, pretty soccer, whatever. And I think the issue, though, was that he never then came back and said, look, here are the deficiencies. Here are the problems we're having. This hasn't quite worked. And I think a manager can do that. They can say, we're going to play a 4-3-3, try to be attacking, try to keep possession of the ball at least 60% of the time. And then when that doesn't work for 5 games straight, and if they get asked that question, they can easily just say, it's not quite working. We don't quite have the consistency we need here. So we're going to try different things.
Yeah, this didn't work. We're going to try a more counter-attacking style. It's okay to change, right? The thing is, I think maybe some people, I'm not saying necessarily Dylan thinks this, but some people think that if you say what your style of play is, then that's you done for your entire contract. You have to play that way. It's not true, right? No. You can easily turn around and say, right, that's not working. Here's what we're going to do instead. There's absolutely no shame in that.
Yeah, I mean, Guardiola has not just stuck with the same players in the same spots because that's what he said he was going to do. That's what he did in the first game or first season.
Well, it feels like Fernandinho is going to go forever.
Yeah, it could be. That might well be. But yeah, so I think I much prefer having a coach say specifics, but I also would add that there is room for mind games with this stuff, which I think is also important. That Sir Alex Ferguson would openly say that we have never played a 4-4-2. I'm using him here as the we here. I'm not including myself. But he would say, we Manchester United have never played a 4-4-2. That's not what we do. They play 4-4-2 all the time. But if you say that,
you can think 4-4-1-1.
Probably.
I know they tend to have one striker deep or one striker high.
Yeah, it's about nuance, and it's about. But I think it is also about the way you see it and kind of keeping people on their toes. And you don't let those English Premier League managers. They never let the media get comfortable. They're always kind of like prickly in their responses. They always kind of come back at them. And I think maybe that's not something like at least U.S. national team coaches do quite as much.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is room for that from a manager, that they can sort of mess with a person. They can mess with a journalist. I think this is Tenorio and I were talking about this, that like Berhalter will give it back to a reporter.
If you don't have like a good justification for your question.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And so I think there's room for that too, that you can use it to your advantage however you want to.
Yeah, and it establishes your authority, right? If you're very clear about what you're trying to do, that gives you a good solid ground to stand on.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm all for it. I kind of understand why Dylan would ask this question, but I hope that I've convinced Dylan, and we've convinced Dylan and other people, that it is better when a coach says, this is my style of play.
Yeah. And I would say the final thing for me is it's way better because it does hold them accountable. Whether or not that's something they want in their job, that if you keep saying...
If they're bold, it should be.
What do you mean?
If they're confident and brave and bold, it should be. You should want to be held accountable because it's something that, I don't know, just holds you to a high standard.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't even care about a high standard. I just want them to be held to a standard. And I think if you're a coach who keeps saying, oh, no, we're doing great, we're playing proactive attacking soccer and we're keeping possession, and you're not. You're playing defensively bunkered soccer and you don't have the ball. You can keep saying that, but it's not true.
Yeah.
And I think it gives us, it gives fans, it gives media an opportunity to sort of analyze what the coach is saying and see if they're actually doing it. And if they're not, then you can hold them accountable, as opposed to never saying what you're doing. Then you never have to say like, oh yeah, that didn't work, because it's always an experiment and I have to keep all my secrets secret.
I have to keep all my secrets secret. And worth pointing out, it's not like he's giving away all his secrets when he tells you just an approximate style of play.
Yeah.
Right? He's not giving away his dossiers so that the opposition can look at them and the US is going to get beat every time because Berhalter said something in a press conference, right? He's a smart man, and coaches are smart people. They're only letting us know as much as we need to know, and we're very much only
or as much
seeing,
as they want us to know. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So we're only seeing the very surface bit of the iceberg.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, today's sponsor is All-American and has a very unique approach. It is Grip 6 Belts. GRIP, Grip6, the number 6.com, Grip 6 Belts. Taylor, you have worn your Grip 6 belt.
I have.
There is no belt like it.
There is no belt like it. There's no loops. There's no holes. It's got the badger teeth to hold it in place. I love talking about the badger teeth. And it's got the very comfortable belt buckle with no nickel in it, which I know is important for Mr. Grove and probably many other people out there.
It also comes with a guarantee. A guarantee. They would sit down in a press conference and say, if anything happens to your belt, we guarantee it will last your lifetime. That's quite the guarantee with a belt.
It is, and since it's made in the United States, you can just send it back if something doesn't go right. They'll send it right back to you, or probably not the same one, but probably a replacement one.
They either fix it or replace it.
Although my inclination is to say that given that they're guaranteeing every single part of it, they probably don't get too many shipped back to them.
Yeah, they guarantee. We have noticed, because we got a couple of emails, the last ad read that we did just before Black Friday, apparently the discount codes at grip6.com/TSS, which is where all our discount codes are, they didn't work during Black Friday. We found out afterwards this was because all discount codes except Grip6's own Black Friday codes had been turned off. We've straightened this out.
We have.
So our codes now work.
All
you
right.
can get 33% off the 3-pack, 20% off an individual belt at grip6.com/TSS. They definitely work, and in time for the holidays.
In time for the holidays. You can buy it for the whole family. All of them.
I'll also, we talked about Atlanta. I'll be packing Grip 6 for Atlanta.
As will I.
Nice and lightweight, nice and comfortable when we're sitting on the bus and walking around.
There we
it's
are.
The perfect belt.
So one more time, what's the website?
Grip6, GRIP, the number 6.com/TSS. And that's where you will see our very much functional discount codes. And I guarantee, if you see me in Atlanta, my pants will be up. Thanks to the belt.
It's a good guarantee. So thank you to Grip 6 for sponsoring this show and for keeping Daryl's pants up. Always important. A couple more questions on the day, Mr. Grove, starting with Mr. Ben Richards. On a recent podcast, you discussed what CONCACAFing entailed. What would other federations' version of this be? What does it mean to be UEFA or CONMEBOL?
Or other federations. Have you got some answers?
I do. I don't really have one for UEFA or CONMEBOL because I'm sure they exist.
I do.
I'm sure they exist in some form, or there's some colloquial saying.
Yeah.
But I don't know them. I've gone for you could get Oceanid, which is when you win all of your qualifiers and then get knocked out of the World Cup contention via playoff.
I've got the exact
That's
same
what I would
one
go with.
for Oceania. I have a CONMEBOL one. To be CONMEBOL'd is to be the victim of a cunning handball.
Okay.
So Diego Maradona CONMEBOL'd England in 1986 with that handball that he got away with. Luis Suarez of Uruguay CONMEBOL'd Ghana in 2010. Do you remember he made the decision to handball on the line to take the red card and the penalty kick, which was then saved?
Yep.
So cunning in both instances.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
If I were going to go CONMEBOL, I would probably go like you were forced to play at a high elevation.
Yes.
That's probably what I would say.
Well, that's when you get CONMEBOL within CONMEBOL.
Yes.
It's when you have to go and play in, is it El Paz or La Paz?
Yeah.
El Paz, I believe, at an elevation of something like 12,000 feet. Yeah. When you can't breathe, that's when you get CONMEBOL.
Yep. Any other ones?
I got
Okay.
it. To be CAFed.
Yeah.
To be CAFed, which is the African Federation, is to be beaten in the opening game of a World Cup by an opponent you assumed was easy.
Oh, wow.
So this happened in 1990. Argentina, world champions, faced Cameroon in the opening game of their opening game of the 1990 World Cup. They got beat. They got beat by Cameroon. And then again in 2002, France, world champions, beat by Senegal.
To get beaten by an African team. I got
Yes,
you. Okay.
you get capped.
I misunderstood.
Yep.
I was thinking you lose if you're the African team and you lose your opener, then you've been capped.
No.
Like,
If you're the world champion in both of these cases, and you underestimate African opposition in the first game in the next World Cup, you got capped.
That makes sense. I might even extend it to just any game in the World Cup because I feel like the United States definitely got CAFed by Ghana in 2006. I had CAFed as when lazy previewers talk about the players that they have familiarity with and nobody else. So, for example, Cameroon have had success in the recent past, but will 37-year-old Samuel Eto'o be able to carry the load? It's like, no, he retired 4 years ago. He will definitely not be carrying the load. Will Didier Drogba be helping Ivory Coast in the World Cup? We don't know, so it's all going to fall on Wilfred Zaha's shoulders. It's a lot of the sort of the players that I'm familiar with is who I will be writing this preview about.
I've got one final one.
What you got?
To get UEFA'd. So, again, this is an opposition team playing against a UEFA team.
Is it getting
a tournament.
favorable treatment by FIFA?
It's not. That's a good one. To get UEFA'd is to fall victim to the old world arrogance of the teams like Germany or Italy and assume that they're better than you because they've got this history or they've got star players, and then you kind of lose the game before it's even started. I really think that happens, especially at World Cups, is when teams come up against historic powers, they sort of start to think, oh no, we got to look out for this team. Yeah. So to get UEFA'd is to sort of be colonized in your head.
That one does seem a little bit specific to the bigger teams in UEFA, though. No, like I feel like Andorra probably don't have that problem.
I mean, probably not. Yeah. Well, they are undefeated in the World Cup finals.
Well, there we go. It's a good bar to set.
Thank you to Ben for this question.
But I mean, the serious answer to this is I really don't think there is a term like that outside of CONCACAF, which is sort of strange, but I guess not that strange.
I tell you, this is why I think it exists, is that the United States is maybe culturally different to almost all the other teams we play against in CONCACAF, right? So that's why I think there's an element of racism to it, to referring to every team like Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, or whatever as like CONCACAF, which almost just means Hispanic.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
I think that's where it comes from. Like, for example, as far as I know, Mexico and Honduras and Panama, they don't talk about being CONCACAF'd.
I don't know. That'd be interesting. You're probably right.
Unless Blas Perez has just wreaked havoc throughout the region and everybody. Maybe everyone else talks about getting blased.
Well, not anymore, because he is, I believe, retired. So we have no more blasing to happen.
We can all breathe a sigh of relief.
Indeed.
Ready for the penultimate question. I remember the word. It's from Gloria Umatoni. Gloria says, if you look at coaches who are former players, do you think you can see their preferred style of play from their professional days in their coaching style? Alternatively, do you think a former player's position can influence their coaching style? For example, does Greg Berhalter's perspective as a former centre-back influence his tactics? Or does Thierry Henry's history as a world-class forward influence his tactics?
I would say maybe no to the second part.
Okay.
I would, but like somewhere in between overall for the question, because I think it's not necessarily about the position they played or the style they played, but I think it's more about like what the coach that they most enjoyed playing under did.
I'm with you on that. I think it's where they played, but it's not where in terms of position. It's where in terms of who they were playing under and where in the world they were playing.
Yeah. I mean, and I would say it might even be like Carlo Ancelotti may have loved playing under Arrigo Sacchi because of what he allowed Carlo Ancelotti to do in his position, but he still overall just loved the system and what it did for him as a player, so that he wants to do something more like that system. And so I think it comes down to, you can almost like trace it back, the like genealogy of coaching that Carlo Ancelotti had Arrigo Sacchi. Arrigo Sacchi had his inspirations, and it keeps going and going and going.
The outlier, or at least the counterexample, might be Pep Guardiola. Because if you think of what is the most important position to all Pep Guardiola teams, we mentioned this earlier, right? It's that sort of that pivot holding midfielder guy. Like he's always had Fernandinho, or before that he had Xabi Alonso, or before that he had Sergio Busquets, most famously. And that seems to be the core of any Pep Guardiola team. That was Pep Guardiola's position. When he played for Barcelona, that was the most important position.
Yeah, but I guess that's what I'm saying is for me it's more of like a chicken or the egg thing because was it just that it was his position or that he had played that position for many coaches and he didn't love it, but then came Johan Cruyff and he was like, oh, this position is great now. I love it. I want to coach like that. I want my players to play that way.
I think the answer in this case is that Johan Cruyff is both the chicken and the egg because I think Guardiola was sort of somewhat wasting away in Barcelona B and Johan Cruyff came in, saw him play and was like, this guy. Yep. Let's get this guy in the first team, build the team around him. This is the style we're going to play. And there's been an evolution, but there's a lot of similarity between what Johan Cruyff liked to do and what Guardiola likes to do. So even then, it looks like Guardiola's teams that he coaches now seems to revolve around the position and style that he used to play. It's actually really just the lineage of the coach he played under, Johan Cruyff. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and it extends to Jurgen Klopp. He was asked about this. He talked about a man named Wolfgang Frank, who has since passed away. But that was his manager at Mainz when Jurgen Klopp was playing there. Wolfgang Frank famously introduced the 4-4-2 to Germany and emphasized the idea of marking space and not players. You can see how that informs the way Jurgen Klopp likes to play today.
And to bring it full circle to Greg Berhalter, I think we referenced the other day the Portenorio story where Berhalter talked about wherever he went, he would write down coaching sessions and ideas, and he's always about writing down ideas in a book. And then Greg Berhalter is basically the sum total of everywhere he's played and everyone he's played under. And he spent a good chunk of time playing in their Eredivisie and a little bit, I believe, in their Eerste Divisie. Right? Yeah. So that's why the way that Columbus played and the way we think the US might play is going to be kind of a Dutch style because he spent so much time there. Yeah,
we can hope.
Yeah, he's not going to pick 11 centre-backs and have everybody head balls away.
That'd be a risky strategy. It'd be risky. I will say the one person I can think of whose coaching career has sort of mirrored their playing career is Diego Maradona. Because I feel like the way he was as a player is pretty much the way he is as a manager.
Yeah, but it turns out it works better with a ball at your feet than it does from the sidelines.
A little bit, yeah.
I've got a good counterexample for you in England. Glenn Hoddle. I'm not sure how familiar our listeners will be with Glenn Hoddle, but he was an England and Spurs midfielder who was famously very creative and was branded a luxury player and all that kind of stuff. And people really thought when Glenn Hoddle took over the England team in '96 that suddenly England would become this very flashy team and maybe he would pick Matt Letizia and build a team around him. He didn't.
Nope.
He didn't. He was just much more pragmatic because you don't really take those traits and put them on the team that you coach because maybe you've just learned other ways, right? You've just realized that maybe you can't have 11 luxury players.
Yeah, I mean, but it can also, to your point though, that your reputation can have the opposite effect. That if you have this reputation for being very you're a playmaker and you are a luxury player, you might then respond to that by being like, well, that's not how I'm going to be as a manager. I'm going to prioritize being rigid and defensive.
Yeah, overcompensate.
Yeah, because you want to prove that you can do both and you're not just an attacking manager, for example.
All right. I feel like we answered that. I think so. I say well done us.
I think well done us and well done Johan Cruyff because it seems like he is pretty instrumental in a lot of different coaches' beliefs.
And thank you, Gloria, for putting that question to us.
Can I tell you one thing really quickly that I learned reading about different managers and their tactical predecessors?
No, sorry, I'm busy.
Fair enough. Carlo Ancelotti, this is one of my favorite things, is I guess he famously doesn't have a... he likes a 4-4-2, he likes it to be fluid, but he famously does not have this is what we have to do. It's about getting the best players into the starting 11 and making it work that way.
Really?
And he was talking about how one of the early formative moments for him was, I think when he was managing Parma, but it may have been with Milan, that he didn't want to sign Roberto Baggio because Baggio didn't fit the system he was utilizing.
Yeah.
Baggio then signed elsewhere, scored 22 goals the next season, and Ancelotti was like, all right, that's it. I'm just getting the best players. If there's a player who I want and I know is very good, I'm going to find a way to fit them into the team.
I'll figure it out. That sounds easier said than done.
Well, absolutely. But I think the idea is that if you don't have a set philosophy and a set way of this is how it has to be, like Guardiola does, like Jurgen Klopp does, then it gives you the freedom to be like, all right, well, then how do I need to change things to make it happen? And I think that's what Ancelotti is a little bit more about.
All right. One other way of looking at this is that maybe players don't see the game the way we think they see the game, right? You imagine Zinedine Zidane, and you see all the roulettes and clever turns, and like, you know, it's very flair. But as a coach, from what we understand, he was quite get it down to basics. As in, like, remember the whole thing of like Real Madrid play Juventus in the Champions League final, and one of the instructions is, don't keep crossing it because Chiellini and Bonucci will head it away. Play balls in low. So like maybe when Zidane was playing, he was just thinking, what are the simple solutions? And it just so happened that he had the technique to pull off things that look very flary and incredible. Like the way he sees the game may not be the way you think he sees the game. So then it's impossible for us to take what we think he sees and translate it into what we think his coaching should look like.
See, I might take it in a slightly different direction because for me, like I think about him in the 98 World Cup, and it felt like it was a lot of kind of simple, not even simple passes, but just 1-2 touch passes, keep the ball moving, and it wasn't so much reliant on tricks. But I think that can then be problematic because if you're a player who's capable of playing for a World Cup champion and playing very simple one-touch passes because you have that vision, it can be really difficult to then coach someone how to have that vision.
That's why you only manage Real Madrid.
Yeah, well, yeah. And even then, you still got to do a little bit of work. So I think even then, like trying to coach somebody based on your position can almost be more difficult than coaching a different position than you played.
I like that you've called me up on this though as well, because I've had this conception of Zidane for this conversation. Highlight reel Zidane.
Oh, I mean, he liked a roulette, certainly.
He did, but you're right. He did sort of keep it simple but good.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. So maybe that in a way that does translate to his coaching style. So now I want to change my answer to yes.
Okay, there we are.
I guess the actual answer is it depends.
It does.
It depends on the coach.
But speaking of keeping it simple, Roughneck Scarves, today's sponsor, keeps it very simple when it comes to acquiring things to keep your neck warm that are soccer related. Thank you, Roughneck Scarves, for sponsoring today's show. Mm-hmm. It is, of course, MLS Cup coming up. If you've got an Atlanta scarf or a Portland scarf, then I hope you'll be waving it in Atlanta because it's going to be 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Yep. Now is a good time. If your team did not make MLS Cup, as I've just checked the math, most teams did not. Correct. Maybe now is a good time to recommit to your team and to say, I'm going to support them in 2019. I'm going to buy a scarf. If you go to roughneckscarves.com, they're one of the official scarf providers for Major League Soccer. You can find a scarf for your team at roughneckscarves.com. They're also the official scarf provider for the United States Soccer Federation, including the women's national team. I've heard of them. The draw for the Women's World Cup is happening this Saturday. Yes. So if you want to get, again, like advanced scarf, you can get that well in advance of the tournament so that you can start your support early. And they have some USWNT specific scarves as well. So once again, roughneckscarves.com. And of course, you can get 20% off when you use the discount code Total Soccer Show. Total Soccer Show, all one word, for 20% off at roughneckscarves.com. All right, you did the penultimate, so let's get to the ultimate question. The final question of today's show comes from Jeremy Griever. In a recent show, you answered a listener question about the future of the U.S. midfield, specifically the number 6 role. Why no mention of Danny Williams or Alfredo Morales? Is it simply a talent issue, injuries, or is it not experienced enough like Bradley, but not young enough like Adams, Acosta, Trapp, and McKennie? I thought Williams played well against Portugal last year, and Morales is starting regularly for Dusseldorf. This is why I am curious to hear your answers. Thanks, says Jeremy. Now, I know that you had a sustained campaign against Alfredo Morales and Danny Williams, so it might make it difficult for you to answer this. So the reason we didn't mention Danny Williams is mostly he'd sort of fallen. It was like an out of sight, out of mind thing, right? Mm-hmm. He'd been injured for a long time. I think broke his fibula in March. Oof. So he only just made his comeback. Actually, against Wolves, he came on for the last few minutes. So 2 appearances, 12 minutes this season. Wow, yeah. So he's only just back in action. And really, when you think about the Dave Sarachan era, which is now ended, the best they played was against Portugal, and Danny Williams was the number 6. In that game. Yeah. So maybe there's a shout for Danny Williams if he stays fit. But yeah, the reason we didn't think about him in that conversation is genuinely we kind of forgotten about him because he'd been injured for so long. At least that's my answer. I don't know what your answer is. I mean, I think that's it. I wouldn't be so, to be honest, I wouldn't be so harsh as to say like we forgot about him. It's just more like I haven't loved some of the caps that have been given because it feels like you're not even playing for the second division team or you're playing for a fourth division team. Like, does that justify a call-up? And I would say, yeah, Danny Williams not being able to play, being out injured is why I don't necessarily think of him right away. Yeah. Alfredo Morales has played, yes, he's been playing for Dusseldorf, he's been playing in the Bundesliga, but is kind of consistently with a Bundesliga team that is fighting relegation or getting relegated and then getting promoted, as is Dusseldorf. Ingolstadt went down with Morales last year. Yeah, and so all that is to say, I don't think either one of them is a bad player. I think they're both very good. Mm-hmm. I really liked Alfredo Morales when he, in the few times we saw him in a U.S. jersey. The difference for me is that when you and I talk about potential number 6s, I feel like I try to almost have a criteria in place of, like, have they been called recently? Is this a player that he is familiar with? Is there reason to call them in? And it's sort of like you go down that box and you kind of establish people that fit that mold. There's a decent chance that Greg Berhalter looks at these two guys eventually. Yeah. But in terms of, first of all, with that
Bruce
January...
Arena kind of didn't, right? Do you remember he said he wasn't that familiar with Danny Williams, so he just didn't call him?
Yeah. Well, Bruce Arena's Bruce Arena, and we'll leave it at that. But, like, yeah, I doubt these guys get in the Gold Cup, obviously, because they're playing in Europe. But, like, maybe they get looked at down the road, and when they do, I hope they do. But it's for me, it's
why
sort
does
of
Gold Cup have anything to do with this?
Excuse me, not Gold Cup. I meant January camp.
Oh, January camp. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
January camp they won't be. And like I hope they do get it into consideration. But in terms of us talking about the future number 6, right now they're so far on the outside looking in that to me to talk about them for any great length of time would be a little bit disingenuous because I can't say, Danny Williams has been doing this really well because he hasn't been.
I've watched little bits of Alfredo Morales, and I still like his tackling. Yeah. But what I do remember, and this is the reason I didn't mention him when we talked about the number 6s, I don't remember him ever having a really good game for the US in the couple of years when he was called up. Right? I think he got like 13 caps, like 2014, 15, 16, that kind of, all under Klinsmann, right? I don't remember ever being impressed by what I saw from Alfredo Morales in a US shirt. Yes. So, and that's my main frame of reference. So I think that's why, for me, he wasn't in the conversation. I would be open to being persuaded that his form for Ingolstadt and then Dusseldorf warrants another look, maybe. But there's also a lot of midfielders available, right? So it's a tough case.
I have a question that could take us down a very long road. Maybe it's a question for another day. If you say it is, it's fine.
Is it 12 hours on a bus long road?
Who is the player that's shown the most under Jurgen Klinsmann? Because I would struggle to say a player that looked super duper good all the time.
All the time, like most.
I mean, or
good
pretty consistently, yeah.
Under Jurgen Klinsmann, Tim Howard.
Yeah,
because we got a lot of peak.
I'd say Tim Howard, maybe Jermaine Jones, but that might be just me loving Jermaine Jones, and so that's why I think that way. But yeah, I feel like I guess he is one though who I guess Bob Bradley gave him his first cap, but he really did seem to grow into that team. So maybe those are the two. Yeah, good answer with Tim Howard. I like it.
There's probably a better answer, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I asked that mostly just to say that I don't really want to judge Alfredo Morales by what he did under Jurgen Klinsmann because I don't know how much he was told to do under Jurgen Klinsmann.
That could also have been part of the problem.
So if they get called into a camp, Daryl and I will both be enthusiastic to see them. But that's answering honestly. That's why I didn't consider them, is because right now I don't think they're in that much of consideration.
Yeah, and I kind of forgot. I stopped thinking of them as part of the player pool for various reasons. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I mean, but like in my mind, it's not that much different than Emerson Hyndman. It's like Emerson Hyndman is a talented American, even younger than these two, but he's not getting the regularity of minutes or not minutes at like that high level that we would like to see from a person potentially starting at central midfield for the US.
Isn't he playing for Hibs?
He is.
You throwing shade at Scotland?
He is injured and not playing for Hibs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're throwing attention at Scotland and knowing things that I do not know. Yeah. All right, we've answered Jeremy's question.
I hope so.
If you would like to send us a question, it is totalsoccershow.com/questions. If you subscribe to the show at $10 a month or more, we guarantee to answer one question per month. Please keep the questions short. It makes them a lot easier to answer. Honestly, it makes it just a lot easier for us to understand what it is you're getting at if the question is kind of like a one sentence. Mm-hmm. Also worth noting, I'm going to be flying home to the UK for the holidays on next Wednesday, so we will pre-record a little bumper crop of Christmas shows, right, for next week. So send us your questions because we've got lots of shows to answer them in next week.
That works for me. One more thing to get to on today's episode, and that would be the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network.
Hey!
We have many reports, a lot of them about young Americans, which is always exciting.
Oh, because the U17 Nike International Friendlies were recent, right?
Would you like to get us started, Mr. Grove?
Yes, let's start with Neil Gavoni. Neil Gavoni, I'm going to go with, who is scouting Joe Scally, the 15-year-old, is only 15, American right back for NYCFC. Neil says Scally played the full 90 in all three of the U17's matches in the Nike friendlies. They finished second after a 1-0 win over Turkey and 1-1 draws with Portugal and Brazil. Scally put in good performances throughout, delivered multiple dangerous crosses and had a few good chances himself. He also doesn't turn 16 until December 31st and was only a few hours away from being an 03 player.
Yeah. That's if that labor had been a little bit longer.
Yep.
He's not even in this squad.
So if you want to hear more about Joe Scally and actually any of these U17s, please find the most recent Top Draw Soccer show where Travis Clark and I break down the U17 friendlies and talk about a few performances that we saw. I do notice that Neil missed out that at least one of the goals in this tournament was basically Joe Scalli's fault.
Well, let's not talk about that.
He got nutmegged for the Portugal goal. Other than that, he was excellent.
All right, well, I'm guessing you all did probably talk about Gianluca Busio, scouted by Alex Tremmel. Gianluca Busio is the 16-year-old American midfielder for Sporting KC. After Sporting KC's playoff loss to Portland, Busio joined up with the US U17s at the Nike Friendlies and played the full 90 in their final game against Brazil. Just before halftime, Busio finished an excellent first-time mid-air volley served up by Gio Reyna after a defense-crippling run to give the US a 1-0 lead.
He did do that.
Daryl confirms.
Trevor Taubert is scouting Griffin Yao, the 17-year-old American forward for the DC United Academy.
It's a great name.
Trevor says Yao impressed in his appearances with the US under-17s, scoring against Portugal in their 1-1 draw after a poor back pass from a Portuguese defender. Yeah, Yao put this guy under pressure. This guy, obviously I don't know his name, this young man tried to pass it back to his goalkeeper, but he was kind of panicked and fluffed it, and then Yao was on it and scored.
Well done, Mr. Griffin. Well done, Todd Brannon, scouting Cameron Carter-Vickers, 20-year-old American defender on loan at Swansea from Tottenham. I say well done.
Please be good news.
Because it's not always the most fun scouting CCV. In a midweek game against West Brom, Swansea manager Graham Potter switched from a 4-2-3-1 to a 3-4-3, which saw a backline of CCV starting on the right. They lost that game 2-1, but Potter stuck with the formation into their next game against Derby until they went down 2-0 in the first half. Potter then subbed off CCV and one more player in the 56th minute, with Swansea reverting back to a back four.
Well, it was fun while it lasted.
Yeah. You got some minutes, though.
Michael Curry is scouting Haji Wright, the 20-year-old American forward for Schalke.
Speaking of getting minutes.
Oh, yeah. Michael says Haji Wright started his first ever game for Schalke's senior team, getting 56 minutes in the 1-1 draw with Hoffenheim. According to reports, Wright struggled to find the game, wasn't sharp with his first touch, and had several sloppy giveaways. He didn't improve much after half-time before being subbed out for Weston McKennie. I watched big chunks of this. There was a lot of Haji Wright would get the ball and just kind of try and run at people, and found out that German Bundesliga defenders are tough dudes.
Yeah. It's first game. Maybe he learns. Maybe he realizes, okay, next time a little more foot skills.
Maybe try a trick.
That could be good. That could be good.
That's Tedesco's advice to him afterwards. Try a trick.
So. Yeah. Try a trick. Maybe get a first touch. David Majewski scouting Shaq Moore, the 22-year-old American right back on loan at Royce from Levante. Moore got his first action in over 6 weeks when he played the full 90 against visiting Mallorca, but his most notable moment came when he conceded a penalty in the 89th minute. Royce lost 2-0 and remained in the relegation zone. It was a bad penalty.
Yeah, we saw this footage, right? It's very much more just sticks out a straight leg and just allows a Levante player to run straight into it.
It was especially troubling because I feel like we saw Reggie Cannon
a Mallorca
do this.
Player to run straight into it.
We knew what you meant. It was troubling because I think we saw Reggie Cannon do this for the USA, but we definitely saw Shaq Moore do this as well in the recent friendly. Just kind of sticks that leg out. And it's troubling because this is in the Spanish second division. You have to imagine against even tougher opposition, maybe they exploit that sort of reckless defending a bit more.
Oh, do you mind if we just go back one? And I just realized we were kind of mean about Haji Wright's performance. It's a big deal to get your debut in the Bundesliga, even though it didn't go perfectly. I just want to say congratulations to Haji Wright. That is a huge, huge deal.
Absolutely.
To get your Bundesliga debut before Josh Sargent, for example.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a few years on him, but I'm with you.
But he still did it. He still did it. Well done to Haji Wright.
I forget who tweeted that, but somebody was like, if you... for those of you out there who bet on Haji Wright to get his Bundesliga debut over Josh Sargent, 1, you can collect your money now, and 2, you're lying.
Manny Alcantara is scouting Junior Firpo, the 22-year-old Spanish left-back for Real Betis. Junior scored his third goal of the season in a 1-0 win against Real Sociedad. Firpo was able to clean up a ball off of a set piece and bury it near post.
Well done, Junior. Phil Kennedy scouting Emile Smith-Rowe, 18-year-old English midfielder for Arsenal. Not a player I was familiar with until he became a member of the scouting network.
He's the future.
Smith-Rowe is one of the most brilliantly gifted young players to come through the Gunner system in quite some time. I'm assuming, says Phil.
I'm assuming, says Phil, an Arsenal fan.
Yes. In his latest appearance in a Europa League game against Vorskla Poltava, Smith-Rowe scored Arsenal's opening goal and played the full 90 minutes in a 3-0 win. And his performance was good enough to earn him a spot in the Europa League Team of the Week. Well done, Emile.
Not a bad start. Dylan Viach is getting Kai Havertz, the 19-year-old German midfielder for Bayer Leverkusen, the aforementioned Kai Havertz. Dylan says Kai started and scored in Leverkusen's 1-1 draw with FC Nuremberg. He took his chance well, receiving the ball off a rebound, calmly settling and then chipping it back across goal to the far corner. Kai remains one of the only bright spots on a Leverkusen team that remains in the bottom half of the table.
I think this is a slightly downer scouting report. Let's see. Oh, no, we're going to keep it going. Steve Renard scouting Yuri Tielemans, the 21-year-old Belgian midfielder from Monaco. Tielemans opened the scoring in Monaco's game versus Montpellier this past weekend. That's good. He made space for himself by passing the ball wide, then hanging back near the top of the box for a return pass that gave him the opportunity to shoot and score.
So far, so good.
Monaco then went on to give up 2 late goals to lose 2-1. Business as usual.
Oh, Thierry. Eric Rosner is scouting Moussa Dembele, the 22-year-old French forward for Lyon. Eric says Dembele scored Lyon's 86th-minute equaliser in the 2-2 draw against Lille. The goal was his 5th in all competitions this season.
Zebu A scouting Lucero Cuevas, the 22-year-old Mexican striker for Club America. Cuevas scored the only goal in America's 1-0 semifinal victory, chipping the keeper from an absurd angle. In the final, Las Aguilas will face Tigres over 2 legs, where Lucero will play in front of the biggest crowds of her life. Previous league finals have drawn crowds of between 29 and 51,000 fans.
Todd Ito is scouting Takefusa Kubo, the 17-year-old Japanese attacker, on loan at Yokohama F. Marinos from FC Tokyo. Todd says Kubo wrapped up the J-League season with an appearance off the bench in Yokohama's 2-1 loss to Cerezo Osaka. His lone J-League goal this season came when he scored against Iniesta and Vissel Kobe back in August.
It's a good person to score against, I suppose.
Have you seen who's joining Iniesta and Vissel Kobe?
Oh, who is it? David Villa?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Old buddies.
Yep.
I like it. Fernando Torres is in Japan. Japan's taking over.
They're getting the band back together.
Much like all 80s movies led us to believe, Japan is taking over. Michael Fisk scouting Andreas Christensen, the 22-year-old Danish defender for Chelsea. Thanks, Daryl, for ruining Andreas Christensen's Premier League debut, says
welcome.
Michael. Andreas started over David Luiz, but was beaten for pace and slightly out of position for Raul Jimenez's goal and received a yellow card in Chelsea's 2-1 disappointment in the West Midlands.
There's a lot of disappointment in the West Midlands.
I'm really enjoying that he refuses, you mean just generally speaking?
Yeah.
Like life in the West Mids? I also enjoy that he refuses to say your team's name. David Luiz will most likely start against Manchester City this coming Saturday.
That wasn't Andreas Christensen's Premier League debut overall, right?
Maybe it was this season?
For this season. Yeah, that makes sense. That feels right as well. Yeah. Anurag Agarwal is scouting Morgan Gibbs-White, who played in that very game. The 18-year-old English midfielder for Wolverhampton Wanderers Football Club. Anurag says MGW has finally made his first Premier League start for Wolves. That's Morgan Gibbs-White. Starting in place of the suspended Ruben Neves, MGW also picked up his first assist. He received the ball near the centre circle, had the strength to shrug off the presence of Fabregas, quickly pivot towards goal with pace, and release an inch-perfect through ball for Raul Jimenez just before Conte could step in. He was also praised for his energy and focus by Wolves manager Nuno. MGW is destined to be a very special player.
I don't think I edited that one very much because I just assumed you would want to read as much about him as you possibly could.
If you want an even deeper description of that goal, yesterday's show, we went deep on that goal.
That we did, my friend. That we did.
Including the mean things we think Gibbs-White said to Cesc Fabregas.
That could be.
If you would like to support the show and join the Scouting Network, it is totalsoccershow.com/join. Totalsoccershow.com/join. To support the Total Soccer Show, make sure that we keep on going all the way through 2019.
Keep them lights on.
Keep them lights on. To be clear, there's no real danger that we won't. But, you'd be helping us. You'd be helping us if you did.
But we always want more lights.
Yeah, we're just going to fill this room with lights.
Yeah.
We have weird plans for the Total Soccer Show.
I want the skin of a 70s game show host. Until I get it, I'm not going to rest till I get more lights.
All right, Taylor Rockwell.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully by the time people have heard this, we will be arriving in Atlanta ready for MLS Cup. Can we promise people some sort of MLS Cup review show over the weekend?
I suppose we can.
So expect it maybe Sunday afternoon, I think is a fair time to expect our MLS Cup review show. And congratulations to whichever team won it.
There we are.
And best of luck to both fans this weekend. I mean, there'll be more than 2 fans there. You know what I'm saying. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again on Sunday.